Welcome back to another GameMaker Studio tutorial, and this is the first one of the VFX, the visual effects in GameMaker Studio. So this is the first video in the series which you guys voted on. So this is the first one. Hopefully you actually like this. This is the lightning rod, lightning strike, something, I don't know, but I guess you will get to know this stuff. So because this is the first time I do this, I will just give you a brief introduction into the whole topic. Then I'm going to show you how this is built up in theory, so I'll make some sketches so you actually understand all those points. And of course I will make a shortcut to this, so basically if you just want to use it, link in the description below, the whole project is there, and you just need to have one script, and the other stuff is just basically just filler. But if you wanted to do a little bit more, of course I will go through the whole code, and then you can maybe make some more adjustments to your liking. So this is OneUp Indie. I am the developer of the indie game Clunky Swords and a programmer / pixel artist. So if you are new here and you want more, consider subscribing to my channel, because I try to upload every second day or every day a video. Now I'm on my third, kind of busy the last few days. So let's get right into the good stuff. And before that, this stuff is not made by me, so okay, let's jump to this one. You wanted the visual effects of fire, lightning, sigils, spheres, and here we start with some lightning effect because you wanted the hardcore stuff. Here it is, and this lightning thing was sent by me by Valeria the priestess, by this guy or this girl, not sure about this, I don't know the gender, and of course he or she has a pretty neat channel. So there the game is being displayed, or you can of course follow on Twitter if you like. And she gave me this idea to this little block here from this Russian guy. I guess he's Russian, still not sure about this. Yellow Afterlife. And here, as you can see, you have this lightning rod, and of course you can download that stuff, so free for everybody. I updated it a little bit because there are a few things which are for the older GameMaker. I made it, as you can see, 2012, not the newest post. I updated it a little bit because some things were just ridiculous. For example, repeating 5,000 times, that is quite a lot. So I just updated it to be a little bit more modern. Of course you can take the old original post. This is of course up to you. So what is the basic idea here? So first of all, what you need to understand is that this lightning is basically just every second a different one. So you're having a start point and an end point, and here we just go zig 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 zig, and then you connect from the start point to the end point the lightning strike. And therefore you need first of all 2 points, the start point, the end point. Then you need to define the branches, so basically how many branches you can have. So for example, you just say, hey, I just want to have 5 branches in total, and then that thing will stop here. So this is the thing. And the next thing is, for example, if you want it to go like really zigzag like this, or just very incremental. And the last thing, the color. This is basically the whole thing. So I have this script where all the stuff is in there. So for example, if you don't want to bother with all that stuff which is in here, I have a sample, and there you need once again 2 points, a start point and an end point. So this is just X and Y. I just put that thing in here. So here the lightning will strike. Then I have my endpoint, which is my mouse, and of course on my endpoint I do a little particle effect. This is a little bonus. You don't need to have that. I thought this of course looks a little bit better where you have the point where the lightning is striking. And then of course you need the branches, how long they are. So this is a min and a maximum value. So you can see here x min, x max. And so basically every branch, so basically this is one branch, then the second branch, third, and so on and so on. And Therefore you can define the minimal and the maximum length, and so it stays dynamic. And this is basically how thick the min and the max value, how thick if you can go like this or if it's just smaller. So this is up to you. And these side values, which is called anchor frag min, anchor frag max, this is just the thickness, how big those zigzags can be. And then of course a color overlay, because everything is gray, but then we tint it and bam, we got what we like. Of course we can change this, you can change it, no problem. So the first thing which I just said here, so basically I have just one thing and then I run this draw code. So basically I just having, you can see this draw lightning script, and then once again you give the start and the end point, then how long the branches can be min max and how big those zigzags and the colors, and bam, this is it. And for example, once we go in here, there are quite a few things. I will go through point by point by point, and of course later on if you like to change, then you can do this. And because don't be afraid, there are quite a few things in here, but if we go line by line by line, you will understand how this thing is basically set up. So what the idea here is, you get lots of arguments you put in. So first of all, these are the coordinates. X ini is just the initializing starting point, and X fin is the end point. So these are the first two, the first and the last point, and then well, you have a specific length and that you will use. And this is basically what you have here. And therefore you have two variables. The first ones are just temporal variables, which are just being used to get and change some stuff, and these are the passive variables, which are starting point, end point, and then well, the anchor frag, this is how zigzaggy it can be, and of course what kind of color you are having. And then the first thing which we are getting is the L, which just stands for length. So point distance is just getting the starting point to the end point, and then well, this is defining a lot of things depending what you can do. And the length is of course defining more than just the point from start to finish. Here you can actually make some adjustment, for example, that you can actually have less let's say branches. So for example, if I just put in 5, because this is the thing, so you just see that if you're changing a little bit, as you can see, bam, here's my endpoint where my particle effects are, but as you can see, I'm just having 5 branches, and then that thing, this loop stops. So here of course there was a value of 5,000. This is a little bit overkill. I wouldn't be doing this. Of course it stops sooner, but I don't want to, for example, give too many repeat possibilities there, because then it can get quite taxing on your performance, and this is a thing which you definitely don't want. So let's go back in here. So first of all, we are getting the distance, and then this is a failsafe, is if our distance from the start to the end point is 0. So if we're having no, then we go return 0, and then it will break, and then well, or the other code is not being drawn. This is just a failsafe. You don't have to do this, but it is not the worst thing. And then we are getting the, first of all, the direction where we are shooting at. So this is again a start and the end point. And then we're getting the direction with point direction, and then we're getting well, the end point dx and dy, and this point is being used later on for some other stuff which is being later on explained. So this is, you're just getting those 2 points. For now you can completely ignore them. And then for the side direction sx and sy, then once again you need a length beer function, which is just giving the, well, the point direction, so this is the direction which we are going to, and we just go with 1 pixel because this is good enough for us. And then we will have to add 90 degrees to one side, so we're just updating the eye. So this is the original direction, let's say for example to the right. Now 90 degrees, we're going upwards, and then we're getting this SX and SY point, and this is being used for the side branching. Then we first of all get our first coordinates, which is px and py, and these values are temporal because they're getting changed from branch to branch. So you just have to quite a few things, you know. So you just need to consider we're having one point and the second point, and then we have our first branch. But then, for example, we want to go another branch, then we're just taking this endpoint, which is for this. So this is the px point and py point, and the second one, which, how was it called, cx. So you can just consider it the end branch point. So we have px and cx, and then we go from here, we are taking this point, and then it's getting overwritten as the new px point, and this one is the newest cx point, and so on. And then, well, this is what you basically get in the end. So this is the part here. So you just understand, of course there are lots of points to here, and this is a little bit confusing at the start, but no problem. And then we're getting I overwritten, which I find kind of interesting, because first of all we need it for some other stuff, and then we're getting overwritten. This is, in my opinion, not the best code, but alright. And then we are getting an I, which is the argument 4 and 5. And this is how long one of those branches can be. So let's say between 5 pixels, maybe 10. So this is how long one of those branches can be. This is, if we go back in here, branch length, this is argument 4 and 5. And this is being used later on as a deciding factor if we're having another branch, or if after some iterations we reach, because this is getting bigger and bigger. So for example, this I value, first of all, just has a value between 5 and 10, no problem. And then later on we're just checking, hey, is it still smaller than our total length? So have we already reached our endpoint? If not, blah, 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 do this code, yada 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 yada. And then, well, the I is getting plus equal again between a range between let's say 5 and 20 or 10 pixels or whatever that was, because this is now the next branch, and so on and so on and so on. At some point, if this thing is not working here, so let's say if well, this loop is not good, because this is how this actually works. This repeat thing is just repeating at the maximum of 50 times. It's going through and looping, and at some point, for example, if the I is bigger or equals than L, then it's saying, okay, right, we reached our endpoint, bye bye, and this is basically it. So you just understand how this works. So this loop is just at some point breaking, because you don't need to have to do it 50 times. Of course, it is still possible, but so you understand. Okay, so the next thing which we're having, this is a thing which I put in because I have those sprites, and for example one of those sprites is, well, empty, so this is just nothing, and then two different kind of colors, one is more light, one is less light, and then most of the time it will get an invisible sprite, so it will be drawing something invisible. Of course, you can do it a little bit more elegantly, but in this regard I wanted to do it like this. So as you can see, this would be empty, empty, empties, and maybe here draw and draw. And because if you have a lightning strike, you don't have constantly something there. You just have flashes, and then it's gone, it's gone, it's gone, and then you have a flash, and then it's gone, it's gone, it's gone. And this is what I do with this flash index. which is being used with 2 sprites, because I'm just drawing 2 sprites. First of all, a regular one, which is just 1 pixel, which can be index 0, nothing, index 1 and 2, a lighter color or a darker color, and then of course a glow as well. So you have in the background something which is bigger, which is the glow, but of course then it has a pretty low alpha, so you have this artificial glow effect. It can be of course done differently. For example, this I could kick out and do bloom shader on this one, but this is not about shaders, so I have to do this kind of artificially, but it still looks pretty decent. So let's go back into this point. So I'm just having this index, then show, most of the time not, and then maybe 1 or 2 times, so you don't spam it. This is the idea behind it. And then we go into the loop, because this is where the drawing is happening. This part I will completely skip because this is quite complicated and convoluted, so if you wanted to know this, sorry, I'm gonna skip on this part because the video will be long enough. And here this will just change the radius, and then for example in the middle it will make it a little bit wider, but nah. So here we come to the more interesting part. So the eye, let's say for example we are at our first looping in our repeat thing, and we definitely haven't reached our total length. Then we're just saying hey cx, and cx is once again the endpoint of the first or the second, fourth or fifth branch or whatever you're in. And then we're having our starting point, and then with this formula you're getting your branches. And for example, if your eye is bigger than your total length, then your last point is of course the end point, which is for me my mouse. And then bam, we reach this. And for example then we are doing one thing. Once again this is a little bit convoluted once again, but here I am drawing, because in the original it was just draw a line width, which I didn't like because I like a little bit more control. Therefore I just took a sprite. Once again, this is my glorious sprite 1 by 1, and I let it flash or don't let it flash depending what kind of thing was chosen. And then we're having the px and py, and then we're having a scale, and the scale is basically just the point distance between our starting point of our branch and the end point of this specific branch. And therefore, for example, if you have point distance, then because this is just one, it goes times the distance. Let's say for example there's a distance between let's go in here, let's go for example we are at this point, and then we're having a point distance between those two of let's say 20 pixels. So my image x scale is 20, and because this thing is just one, it will be 20 pixels as well. And this is how it works, and therefore bam. The y scale, I guess I could go for 1, but for example if you want to change it, make it a little bit thicker and put some more variability, you can do this. In my opinion, doesn't need to be, because lighting can be quite fine indeed. And of course then we need a rotation, and that of course we get by our starting point to our end point, and then point direction, bam, we get it. And then of course the color blend, which was at the very start the argument which we put into the script, and bam. And then we're just checking once again, hey, is our eye bigger or equal to L? Then set. So let's say for example our eye is bigger equal to L, then we're breaking this loop and we are getting out of the repeat thing, and then the script is not being called, at least for this step, because as you can imagine every step will be called again, and then we have a maximum of 50 iterations in here. And if we are not breaking, then we're saying great, let's take our last point of the branch and set it to our first point of the new branch, and then of course iterate or make the I bigger, because this is basically the controlling a variable which is just saying, alright, next branch between two values, which can be once again those two here, 5 and 20. And so we're mixing our new branch, and then once again, because this is where the branch ends, and we go to the next repeat, and to the next repeat, and to the next repeat. This is how it works, and this is just basically it. Of course, particle effect, quite easy, but of course you can go into the project here. Just if you have seen my later tutorial, very similar. This is just not very remarkable sprite. Here there's a little transparency in here, and then it kind of looks good, and this is just basically it. Of course, kill this because I'm not using this one. Of course, this is the second one. As you can see, it's the same starting point, end point, and big, and then of course a color. Of course, if you don't know what kind of color you want to pick, just go for GML color picker, and then you will find, or GM color picker, and you find one of those. Then you can take the hex, which is with the $sign, and then I don't know, or the GML raw. You just put it in, I don't know, one color you want to have. Let's say, for example, you want to have the pink power here, so we just take in this guy here, bam, put it in. Let's see how this looks like. I guess it's quite ridiculous, but you can, if you like, no problem at all. And bam, as you can see, pink power. And then of course here you see that you have the original, and in the background you have the second kind of fading in glow. So let's say, for example, you want to have the glow a little bit darker, so let's go in here. You can make it a little bit more prominent. If you do it too much, it won't be looking good, so just do this very carefully. As you can see here, it's not looking too good because now it looks a little bit spammy. Of course, if you like it this way, you can do this, but I wouldn't recommend it. So hopefully that wasn't too much, because we're already 20 minutes in, and that was the first one. Hopefully the next video will be a little bit more short, because as you can see, this is quite math heavy, but you wanted the heavy stuff, here it is. Have a good one. One up indie.